How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the Timeless Movie Podcast, episode number 28. My name is Victor Vasquez. I appreciate everybody joining me on this series where we talk about recent movies that have come out either in the theaters or on streaming services, and we try to just kind of get those initial thoughts on whether I liked it or disliked it. I kind of give a sense as to why maybe I wanted to watch it beforehand, and then after I watch it, mention some of my favorite scenes or moments as well as performances, and then answer the final question: is this film timeless after one viewing? And again, to me, timeless just means, can I see myself rewatching this film over and over again? Are there specific moments that just made me, maybe tear up or made me laugh so hard, or I just really enjoyed the action? Any of those specific pieces, what are those essential elements that make me want to come back to a movie and rewatch it? So on this week's episode, we are going to be reviewing the newest Marvel entry into the MCU, and it is Thor: Love and Thunder. This is the fourth Thor movie in the MCU. It's the first, four arc movie, I guess, out of any character. Basically, up to this point, we've had 3 Iron Man movies, 3 Captain America movies. We're going to have a third Guardians of the Galaxy movie. But this is really, again, the first time a character has gotten 4 separate movies. And I couldn't be happier because of the character of Thor. He was really one of my favorite characters coming out of Ragnarok. I always liked him when I saw the first initial Thor movie. And then eventually, you saw Thor: The Dark World, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people kind of lost faith in that character. But after Ragnarok came out and Taika Waititi took over as director, everything changed. That character just immediately became more interesting, and it's just all to the fact that Taika Waititi's vision of that character needed to be kind of represented a little bit more, and obviously Chris Hemsworth and his comedic ability to make that character a little bit more alive as well and more hilarious. So I could, again, like I mentioned before, I couldn't be more happy than having Thor get another movie, so I was super pumped. But let's go ahead and jump into the first segment to give you guys my overall thoughts before I went to go watch the movie and what were some initial questions that I had. So the first question that I wanted to really run through with you guys was, is this going to be the last movie of Thor? Is this Chris Hemsworth, sign off as the character? Is this going to be it for him? If anybody was really kind of tuning in to previous Comic Cons, when they announced there was going to be another Thor movie, they actually brought in Natalie Portman. So the last time we saw her was a very small clip in Endgame, but really as a full-fledged character, we didn't see Jane Foster, played by Natalie Portman, since Thor: The Dark World. So they brought her back in, so I was kind of curious, okay, what was her role and what was she going to play? And we ended up seeing her in the trailer as Mighty Thor. And so, what does that mean really for us as the audience? Does that mean that Natalie Portman's going to take over and now Thor is able to retire? Was he going to die off at the end of this specific film? Just really curious, especially kind of going into the fact that we've never hit this kind of territory for any Marvel character where they've gotten a 4th movie. Is this it for Chris Hemsworth Thor? So that was really one of the first initial questions. Second one was one that I just mentioned right now. Natalie Portman returning to the series. What was her role going to be playing as Mighty Thor? How does she get those powers? How is she able to wield Mjolnir? And more importantly, how is Mjolnir able to be repurposed? Because if you guys remember, spoiler warning for anybody that didn't see Ragnarok, that hammer, Mjolnir, was destroyed by Hela. And so it was left in pieces. So how did that get reformed? Is she going to be a variant? Because again, if you start talking about all these multiverses, all the previous movies and Loki, is she just from another universe? Wasn't really sure. So I was really hoping that this film would answer that kind of question as well. Last but not least, I was very curious about Christian Bale. So I found out that he was cast as the villain in this film, and we really haven't seen Christian Bale in a superhero film since the Dark Knight trilogy. So I was really intrigued as to what his character would be, how he would act against Chris Hemsworth or Natalie Portman's Thor. And again, just trying to get that vibe and see how his character would be portrayed in the MCU. As many of you folks might know, Christian Bale is a chameleon. He does so well when he changes the way he looks in every specific film that he's in. So I was curious, okay, how crazy would he get, or how crazy would he look in this film? And after looking at the trailers, it was amazing how he's able to transform and look super menacing and super scary as Gore the God Butcher. So again, those are really the three key questions that I was asking myself before I ended up watching Thor: Love and Thunder. All right, now I want to move on to the next segment, which is my overall thoughts of the movie now that I've actually been able to see it. So I went to go see it a week ago on opening night. I went to go see it on Dolby Cinema. Wanted to get the best experience that I possibly could. Wanted to see what kind of music that was going to get played, because in Ragnarok they had the great song by Led Zeppelin, Immigrant Song, and it was just bumping the whole time. So I was super excited to see what would be that theme for Thor in this film. After I got out of the theater, all I can say was that this was a awesome movie to watch. Just as funny and hilarious and ridiculous as the Ragnarok film that came out a couple years ago. It just had just some ridiculous parts. You had, these goats that would scream. You had Thor being as funny as ever. You had Stormbreaker and Mjolnir, these two objects that you wouldn't think had any life, but now in this film, they're given life. It was just so funny, just being able to see that these objects be given some type of a role in the movie. But overall, I really enjoyed my time watching Thor: Love and Thunder. It only ran for about an hour and 50 minutes, which is on the shorter end of different Marvel movies. But it was a really good time. I'm really still having this debate in my mind whether it matches up or is better than the Multiverse of Madness, the Doctor Strange movie that came out earlier this year. But it was still, again, a fun time. You had, again, the story of Thor kind of going through life. He seems like he's still kind of battling with himself in order to kind of understand what he's supposed to do. His whole life, he's been told that he was going to be king of Asgard. And, after Endgame, he just kind of was left in almost like a midlife crisis moment where he's like, he doesn't really know what to do. And so now he's kind of venturing out into space with none other than the Guardians of the Galaxy. They actually come out in the trailer, a little bit of the opening movie as well. But it's really him just kind of going through it and being with his new family, as you would say, and just trying to battle out in these different types of items. But really the story just revolves around Thor kind of figuring out his life. He notices that, before all this craziness happened of Infinity War and Endgame, his life was pretty good. He was, on his way to be king of Asgard. He had a girlfriend in Jane Foster that he really loved. And then now, cut back to current timeline, he feels like his whole life is just kind of up in the air. He doesn't have somebody that he loves. He doesn't have anybody that can, he can take care of. And because of all the pain that he went through in Infinity War and Endgame and losing his brother, losing his whole entire family, and losing Asgard, he's at this point where now basically closes off. That way he doesn't have to feel the pain of losing anybody else. So he does that for the Guardians of the Galaxy. At the beginning of the movie, he's hanging out with them, but he starts noticing that he starts getting this attachment and this feeling of being with them that now at any point, he just tries to shut them off and move on to different things. This movie just also did a great job with the villain. Marvel has been killing it so far with different villains that they are introducing into each one of these movies. First, you had like Killmonger. Then, of course, everybody remembers Thanos. Then you have all these different types of villains like Scarlet Witch, Wen-Wu from Shang-Chi. And now you have Gore the God Butcher. And his story is just super tragic because it really kind of just revolves around the pain of a man believing so much in a god, thinking that if he worships this god his whole life, then everything will be fine. He'll protect his daughter. But then come to find out that what he believed in didn't really matter. His daughter still died, and the gods that he looked up to were really worthless. They didn't care about anything of any worshipers or anybody that followed them. They only cared about themselves. And that's really the evolution and the beginning of Gore the God Butcher, where now he becomes this menace, this villain. And his whole goal is to take out every single god that there might be in existence. And he will not stop until each one has been able to suffer and been taken out as well. And so that's really the protagonist versus the antagonist story that we see throughout Thor: Love and Thunder. You see Thor kind of going through again, still through that midlife crisis, trying to find love, really, and having to protect other people against this man that's trying to kill and get rid of every god because of what they've done to him throughout his life. And then you also add in the extra element of Jane Foster. She comes back into the series, and we find out from her, if again, spoiler warning for anybody that hasn't seen the movie, she ends up finding out that she has stage 4 cancer. And she is basically at a point where she is not going to be living that long. She needs to start going through chemotherapy and see how best she can try to battle this cancer. Through her research, she tries to find different types of approaches and different ways to how to bypass this cancer, not end her life so quickly. And she ends up turning to Norse mythology of all things, where she ends up reading a little bit about this one item that we had seen before, which is Mjolnir, the hammer of Thor, and how it gives the wielder godlike stamina and ultimate, unlimited stamina and health. And so from that, Jane Foster ends up deciding, you know what, maybe the only way that I can kind of cure myself or find another way to cure myself, if it's not science, then it has to be some type of Norse magic. And that might come from wielding Mjolnir. And so that's really where Jane Foster's story kind of comes in. She now has the power to be able to hold Mjolnir, which means that she is worthy. And she basically now becomes Mighty Thor. And that's again where the story kind of interjects with Thor and Mighty Thor now. Jane and Thor meeting up again after 8 years and however many months Thor calls it out in the trailer if you've seen it. But now their stories start interconnecting and they have to work together and kind of go through, their differences of why they may have separated and then now come together to fight this man that's trying to take away all gods from the universe. Really good story. And I actually, to be quite honest, it's probably the one film I felt after watching it that it was very emotional. Now, again, I'm not an expert in any kind of film and discussing different types of movies that I've seen. Again, my history of movies is very limited. But just from different types of Marvel movies specifically, this one just felt like it had a little bit more heart than others. You compare it to Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. You have Doctor Strange kind of going through fear and having to face his fear of not being the one in charge. And it was a good story, but I didn't feel that much emotion out of it. I felt way more emotion for Wanda, where she's just really trying to have a happy life with her kids. Here in this film, where the emotion kicks in is basically Thor realizing that he just has to accept that people are going to get lost in his life. He's going to lose people, either in death or just going away to other planets. Whatever it is, he's going to have to battle that pain because it's a part of life. And that's the kind of situation that he's in when he sees Jane again. He starts falling in love for her again and starts getting that spark of, again, being in love. And that's that one puzzle piece that's been missing with him. On the other side, you have even more emotion with Jane going through that, again, cancer treatment, knowing that if she doesn't battle this, her life is going to be over. And you could just see that struggle at the beginning where she's trying all her might to be able to use her brain to find another solution, but sometimes there just isn't. And again, it just shows that intense nature of how this cancer can affect not only the person that has it, but also any loved ones that they have around them as well. Last but not least, one of the other emotional moments is, I mentioned it before, Gore the God Butcher, played by Christian Bale. From the get-go, he's actually the first person you see in the film. And you can just feel the pain of somebody worshiping a god for his whole life and then finding out that it's just a big letdown. There's no other better way to kind of express that than through what Christian Bale did in the film. And then his sole mission is, okay, well, if all gods are worthless and they don't really serve any purpose, then let's get rid of all of them. And that's really where that the film kind of just kicks through. And it's just a lot of emotional moments. And obviously, a lot of folks probably might not see it. Again, I know that it's really more of a comedy. I would even say a romantic comedy because, again, Jane and Thor together again, falling in love, or at least trying to. There's a lot of different comedic scenes and funny moments. But they do a really good job to hide those, what I think is really the true testament to this story. It's an emotional one. It's about going through and finding out that even though love is hard and love is painful, everybody's got to go through it and everybody needs that piece as well. So overall, again, I enjoyed my time watching the Thor Love and Thunder movie. I really want to watch it again. Again, not going into whether it's timeless or not, but I just feel like I may have missed some parts, or I really want to laugh at a couple scenes. So might go check it out again. But overall, it was a great time watching it. Just Thor at his best. He was so freaking funny. Chris Hemsworth, just props to him for being able to continue to evolve this character of Thor and just make him even more enjoyable to watch every scene he comes out in as well. So again, I thought it was a really good movie. I had a positive experience, and I think now is a great time to jump into what was my favorite performance of the movie. All right, so as for my favorite performance of the film, this one's going to be tough because there was two performances that I really enjoyed. First one, I have to go with Gore the God Butcher. Christian Bale, the dude's a beast. He does every movie he does, every character he portrays, he just gives it his all, and he just kind of submits to it like that and just kind of goes all in. And that was no exception for Gore the God Butcher. If you've seen the trailers and if you've seen the movie, he just had this creepiness to him. I thought Scarlet Witch in Multiverse of Madness was scary. Gore the God Butcher had some scary scenes as well. He had ways to kind of create these shadow monsters that came out of the ground. He had these weird teeth and yellow eyes, and most of the scenes he'd always kind of be in this black and white environment. It was really awesome how they portrayed him. But again, the way he spoke, the way he kind of, all his nonverbal communication and his body language, it just made it for a more serious and a specific tone that it made you think as an audience member, this guy, you have to take this guy seriously. This guy has to be, something that you have to, again, not take lightly, because if not, then you're basically dead. So it's a great way that he portrayed it. My eyes were always glued to the screen every time he came out, because I just knew that he was going to do either something crazy, something psychotic, something, that would just kind of shock everybody in the theater. So really great job. I love Christian Bale's work, and he just did an awesome job as Gore the God Butcher. The second person I want to highlight is Chris Hemsworth. I mean, I've already mentioned it a little bit before on my overall thoughts, but he just does such a good job with Thor, and it's crazy how he's already come out in 4 separate solo Thor movies, not even including the Avengers films. So he's probably got about 10, maybe getting close to 10 appearances. And he still finds ways to make this character even funnier. He opens up even more about the character. Again, in this one, he's really just trying to find love. He knows that that's really the piece that he's missing, but he doesn't want to go through the pain. And you can see that in his face. You can see how he kind of starts interacting with Jane for the first time. He already recognizes how many months or how many years or specific time it's been since he last saw her. And he just doesn't want to relive that pain over and over again. And again, considering that the character of Thor has already lived for thousands of years, the pain just gets worse and worse. And so Chris Hemsworth just does a great job. He just shows his range as his character, and it just makes me excited because I want to continue watching him as this character. I know that some actors probably don't want to appear that many times if there's not a true evolution of their character, but so far Chris Hemsworth has done an awesome job to not get stale, feel stale with this character. It doesn't seem like it's the same as Ragnarok. Again, he's changed. He's still as funny, but you're still seeing other sides of him as well. So those are the two performances that I really enjoyed. It had to be Gore the God Butcher, played by Christian Bale, and Thor, which is played by Chris Hemsworth. All right, everybody, now I want to jump into my favorite scene or moment of the film. This one actually is pretty tough because normally after I come out of any Marvel movie or any movie in general, I have a particular scene that just kind of blew me away, that's like, whoa, this was awesome, this was spectacular, and I keep thinking about it. This one I think didn't have that, which is I think what was kind of weird for me coming out of the theater is that I feel like every specific scene that did blow me away, I had already seen it in the trailer. So there wasn't a real scene that kind of, made me say like, oh man, like I have to rewatch this. It's more of like the general feeling I got of a specific moment. That moment was Mighty Thor and as Jane Foster. I thought her whole design and her costume and how she looked was so awesome. I thought it was just so cool. The first time I saw her kind of wearing that specific helmet and you could just see her wielding Mjolnir. And it was just an amazing time just to kind of see her. All of her action scenes were super cool. And it was, what I loved most is that it was so different from how the action scenes that normally would be done by Chris Hemsworth as Thor. For her, Jane Foster's Thor, it was just completely more, elegant. It was a lot more kind of aggressive. And then you can even see different types of moments where she would, as she was wielding Mjolnir, she could actually break up the pieces of Mjolnir since it was destroyed. And she could actually use those pieces to hit different enemies. And then she'd get the hammer back, and then it would all form back as the, a whole piece of the Mjolnir hammer. It was just so cool. Again, it wasn't one particular scene that really blew me away. It was really just those types of moments. Whenever Mighty Thor was on the screen and she would kind of summon the lightning or be kind of going and gliding through and knocking out enemies, it just looked so cool and different from the action sequences that we've seen from previous Thor movies as well. I guess another part that I really enjoyed was the opening Thor sequence, where he kind of, you're getting the background as to where Thor is. You see his little training montage where he goes from, I think it's dad bod to god bod. And then again, you just kind of see him throwing down with the Guardians of the Galaxy. That was another great moment as well. But again, nothing in particular in regards to a specific scene that really blew me away. Just to kind of give you an example of what I mean by that, I can always recall like Multiverse of Madness, the Wanda scene against the Illuminati. Not going to spoil it that much, but again, that's a scene that kind of just, after the theater, I'm just constantly thinking about that moment. Here, there wasn't really much that kind of stood out. It was just kind of those specific aesthetics or moments that just kind of impressed me a lot as watching it. But again, that's just a nitpick on my side. I still really enjoyed everything about this movie as well. All right, everybody. Now I want to jump into whether I would recommend you guys go watch this movie in theaters or if it's okay to wait for a streaming service to watch this. I'm going to be a little bit biased. I actually think you guys should go watch it. If you already are a fan of Thor and Marvel, then this is basically 100% recommend go watch it in theaters. If you're not really in tune with the MCU and you watch films here and there, definitely wait for it on Disney Plus. You don't have to go out there. But I think it's a great comedy. It's a great kind of story. And if you're really looking for that emotional piece and an emotional storyline that might be missing from other Marvel movies, this one's for you. It has those types of pieces. Now, it's not going to be a complete drama and emotional roller coaster all the way through. There's definitely going to be some funny moments and some hilarious, takes that are going to be done. But in the actual, details of the specific movie, you're going to see where that emotion kind of kicks in. So it was really great stuff. Again, I guess the one thing I would note is that watching it in Dolby Cinema didn't really kind of impress me as I thought it was going to be. So you don't really have to watch it in IMAX or Dolby. It would probably just be the same as in digital. They did play some really good songs, though, if you are interested. So definitely check it out. I would recommend, again, if you're really a big fan of Marvel, this is a 100% recommend to go to theaters. If not, you don't have to. You can wait for it on Disney Plus. But my recommendation would be to go check it out in theaters. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is the last segment of the Timeless Movie Podcast, and we are going to decide whether this film is timeless. Is Thor: Love and Thunder a movie that I can rewatch over and over again in the future? I am going to say that it does have the potential to be timeless. I'm, comparing it, and I know that's not fair to compare movies, but comparing it to the other Thor films, it's not my favorite. Ragnarok will maintain that position. It was just such a out of the box experience watching Ragnarok because I was not ready for that kind of a Thor movie, and it just blew me away. And so Ragnarok still remains to this day my favorite Thor film, and that one is for sure timeless. This one definitely has the potential to be timeless. Again, I mentioned it earlier, I do want to rewatch it in theaters just to kind of see what I may have missed, other specific elements of the story that maybe I didn't catch the first time. But again, I can totally see myself just still laughing at those funny moments. There's times where like I mentioned, you have Mjolnir and Stormbreaker now being somewhat characters in this universe. You see Thor talking to Stormbreaker and him just being hilarious. And of course, Gore the God Butcher being a great villain that just you have to take seriously. And of course, the introduction of Mighty Thor, which is Jane Foster, and just seeing her just be an awesome badass, just knocking enemies out with the Mjolnir that was reforged as well. So it just has all these different types of moments. Again, this is probably one of the first films, like I mentioned before on the previous segment, where there's not anything that one key scene that stands out. It's more of how I felt as I watched the movie. I was laughing. It got me on certain moments, again, where that emotion kicked in. It just overall, it was a fun time. And I would always, if I saw it on TV or Disney Plus, or again, if I had the chance to go watch it in theaters, I'm more than down to go and watch it again. Now, again, I said the potential to be a timeless movie. I wouldn't say it's a guarantee just yet, again, because I don't consider it as my favorite Thor movie, but I can definitely see myself continuing to watch these movies. And I typically like to do a Marvel rewatch where I try to go through all the different phases and watch the movies. So I really enjoy that kind of a piece of it. But those are my opinions and my thoughts as to why I would consider it a timeless movie. Again, it's those different types of elements where this is much more of an emotional story, but it still has those jokes and those comedic scenes. You have great characters like Gore the God Butcher and Thor, who are just great standouts in the film and just kind of carry the movie from beginning to end. And of course, you have the introduction of Mighty Thor and all of her different types of action sequences and visual effects as well. Now, just to kind of add on a little bit more, one of the reasons why I think I wouldn't maybe, consider it a guaranteed timeless movie is I actually wish it was a lot longer. The movie felt like it was a good time, an hour and 50 minutes, but I actually would have appreciated if there was 30 more minutes of the film, more time with Jane Foster as Thor, more time with Gore the God Butcher, just to kind of expand on his background and his story. I just, I wanted more. Typically, when I come on to these podcasts and I say, hey, oh man, I want more, I want to see more, it's more because of the fact that, it was sufficient, but I'm already anticipating, okay, where's the next story going to take us? Where is the character going to be? Whereas here, I kind of was left with, I probably needed to see more just to kind of get a better feel as to, why Mighty Thor was so important, or why Gore the God Butcher was such a great villain. I just wanted more details to be shown and flushed out in this movie, and I just didn't feel like I got that. So those are really my nitpicks of the movie, and why, again, I consider this as potentially being a timeless movie. But again, those are my personal opinions. I really want to hear from you guys. What are your thoughts on Thor: Love and Thunder? Have you gotten a chance to check it out? And if you have, let me know down below in the comments. Is this movie timeless for you? Did you think it was funny? Did you find any of the emotion that I called out earlier today? Or am I just crazy? Let me know, guys. I want to interact with you. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me on another podcast. My name has been Victor Vasquez. This has been episode number 28 of the Timeless Movie Podcast. Make sure to check me out next week as we cover a new movie and we try to consider it timeless. All right, everybody. Have a great rest of your week.